$5 million. That's what Jimmy Cliff was worth when he died. For a man who gave the world The Harder They Come, who stood beside Bob Marley in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, who sang at the world's biggest stages, 5 million seems impossibly small until you understand what really mattered to him. November 24th, 2025. The news broke like a wave across social media. Jimmy Cliff, the smooth-voiced legend who helped carry reggae from the streets of Kingston to every corner of the planet, had passed away at 81. His wife's words on Instagram cut through the digital noise with profound simplicity. A seizure, pneumonia, and then crossing over. But numbers on a bank statement never captured what Jimmy Cliff truly built. His wealth lived in something far more permanent than currency. It lived in the hearts of millions who found courage in his lyrics, who felt less alone when his voice filled their rooms, who discovered hope in songs about rivers and hard roads and beautiful worlds. To understand the man, you have to go back to where it all began. Back to a tiny parish in Jamaica, back before the fame, before the films, before the legend, back to when he was just James Chambers, a boy with nothing but dreams and a voice that refused to stay quiet. July 30th, 1944. St. James Parish, Jamaica. Still a colony under British rule, still finding its identity. A woman gave birth to her second youngest child among 9 brothers and sisters. They named him James Chambers. The house was loud, crowded, filled with the chaos that comes with raising so many children. But even in that noise, something in young James stood apart. He heard music differently than other children, not just as sound but as language, as emotion made tangible. While attending primary school, a nearby sound system would blast rhythms into the warm Jamaican air. Most kids ignored it, played through it. James absorbed it, let it seep into his bones, and then almost instinctively, he started writing songs. Nobody taught him, nobody showed him how. The music just poured out of him like water, finding cracks in stone. He was a child creating art about a world he was only beginning to understand. And somehow, those early songs carried weight, carried feeling, carried something that hinted at the artist he would become. At 14, everything changed. His father made a decision that would alter the course of music history, though neither of them knew it at the time. He brought James to Kingston, the capital, the beating heart of Jamaica's emerging sound, a place where dreams either came true or died trying. And it was there, standing in that electric, impossible city, that James Chambers made a choice. He needed a new name, something that matched the size of his ambition, something that felt like it belonged on a record, on a stage, in lights. He chose Jimmy Cliff, and just like that, the boy from St. James became someone the world would remember. But wanting to be a star and becoming one are separated by an ocean of rejection. Jimmy learned that lesson fast. He chased every opportunity with desperate hunger, knocked on doors, performed at talent shows where the crowd barely watched, approached producers who looked through him like he was invisible. The music industry didn't care about his dreams. It had heard 1,000 dreamers before him. Then came the night that changed everything. Picture this, a record shop and restaurant, closing time, lights dimming. Most people would see that as the end of opportunity. Jimmy Cliff saw it as his last chance. He walked in and he found Leslie Kong, the owner, and with nothing but raw audacity, convinced him to give him a shot, to record him, to take a chance on a kid nobody knew. Kong agreed. Maybe he heard something in Jimmy's voice. Maybe he just admired the boldness. Either way, he brought Jimmy into the studio. Those first singles didn't set the world on fire. They barely made a spark. But Jimmy kept going, kept recording, kept believing. And at 17 years old, persistence paid off. Hurricane Hattie became his first real hit, produced by Kong. From that moment forward, Jimmy Cliff and Leslie Kong became inseparable, a creative partnership that just worked. Kong understood Jimmy's voice, understood how to frame it, how to let it breathe. Together they created song after song that made Jimmy a rising star in Jamaica, King of Kings, Dearest Beverly, Miss Jamaica, Pride and Passion, each one building his reputation, each one proving he wasn't just another singer. He was something special. In 1964, Jamaica chose him to represent the island at the World's Fair in New York. Imagine that. A young man who'd spent his childhood in a crowded house in St. James, now standing on an international stage as the voice of his nation. That same year, he appeared on This Is Sky alongside Jamaican royalty, like Prince Buster and Toots and the Maytals. He wasn't just arriving, he was becoming essential. But Jimmy's eyes looked beyond Jamaica, beyond the Caribbean. He wanted the world to hear reggae, to feel its rhythm, to understand its soul. So when Island Records came calling, he signed, packed his bags, moved to the United Kingdom, with dreams bigger than the island he left behind.
The label didn't know what to do with him at first. They tried marketing him to rock audiences. It flopped. The music didn't translate, or maybe they just didn't know how to present it.
For a while, it seemed like Jimmy's international ambitions might crumble before they truly began, but he kept creating, kept evolving, and by the late 60s, something suited. His album Hard Road to Travel earned glowing reviews from critics who finally understood what they were hearing. Waterfall became a massive hit in Brazil, proving that reggae could transcend language barriers. The world was starting to pay attention. And then came the songs that would define an era. Wonderful World, Beautiful People. A song so pure, so hopeful, it felt like sunshine translated into sound. It climbed charts across the globe. Suddenly, Jimmy Cliff wasn't just a Jamaican star. He was an international phenomenon. The next year, he released Vietnam, a protest song so powerful that even Bob Dylan, a man who'd written some of the greatest protest anthems in history, called it the best he'd ever heard. Bob Dylan, saying that about Jimmy Cliff. He also released a stunning cover of Cat Stevens' Wild World, adding his own texture, his own soul to an already beautiful song. Everything Jimmy touched seemed to turn golden. But the biggest moment of his career was still ahead. And it wouldn't just be a song, it would be a film. The Harder They Come. If you've never seen it, imagine this. A young man named Ivan arrives in Kingston with dreams of becoming a singer, but the system crushes him at every turn. Poverty, exploitation, violence. His dreams curdle into desperation, and desperation pushes him down a tragic path. He becomes an outlaw, a symbol, a legend in his own doom story.
Jimmy Cliff played Ivan.
And he didn't just act the role, he embodied it. Every ounce of frustration he'd felt chasing his own dreams poured into that performance. Every door slammed in his face, every moment of being overlooked, every ounce of hunger, it all fueled Ivan's fire on screen. The film was raw, unflinching, real. It showed Jamaica not as a tourist paradise, but as a place of struggle, resilience, and unbreakable spirit. And the soundtrack. The soundtrack became one of the most important albums in reggae history. It introduced the genre to audiences who'd never heard it before, brought reggae from the margins to the mainstream. The Harder They Come wasn't just a movie. It was a cultural earthquake. It remains one of Jamaica's most vital exports, a cinematic masterpiece that immortalized Jimmy Cliff as both singer and actor. By the mid-70s, Jimmy appeared on Saturday Night Live, performing for American audiences who were finally catching up to what Jamaica had known for years. But then, at the height of his fame, he did something unexpected. He stepped back, retreated from the spotlight, not out of fear or exhaustion, but out of a need to reconnect with something deeper.
He traveled across Africa. The experience shook him, changed him, opened his eyes to histories and spiritualities he had never fully explored. During this time, he briefly converted to Islam, adopting the name El Hajj Naim Bakr.
For a while, he thought he'd found his spiritual home. But Jimmy's soul was restless, always searching, always questioning. By 2021, he would admit that organized religion never fully satisfied him. Not Christianity, which he was born into. Not Rastafari, which he'd briefly embraced. Not Islam, despite his conversion. What called to him was something broader. Knowledge, truth, wisdom without labels. A universal outlook on life that couldn't be contained by any single doctrine. He was a spiritual wanderer, and he made peace with that. The 1980s brought Jimmy roaring back. He toured relentlessly, collaborated with legends like Kool and the Gang, performed at festivals that stretched across continents. In 1985, his album Cliffhanger earned him a Grammy for Best Reggae Album. That same year, he lent his voice to Sun City, the powerful anti-apartheid anthem that united artists against injustice. Jimmy's music had always carried political weight. Now it was part of movements that changed the world. Throughout the 90s, he refused to slow down, appeared in films like Club Paradise, contributed songs to major soundtracks, and in 1993 he released a version of I Can See Clearly Now that soared to #1 in France and became forever linked to the uplifting energy of Cool Runnings, the movie about Jamaican bobsledders chasing Olympic dreams, underdogs fighting impossible odds. It was the perfect match for Jimmy's spirit. In 1995, he gave children and families worldwide a gift they didn't know they needed: Hakuna Matata from The Lion King. His version carried a joy so pure, so infectious. It introduced his voice to an entirely new generation. Kids who'd never heard of reggae, who didn't know the harder they come, suddenly knew Jimmy Cliff through a song about living without worries. The new millennium found him still glowing with creativity. In 2001, he became a founding judge for the Independent Music Awards, supporting young artists who reminded him of his own hungry beginnings. He knew what it felt like to be overlooked, and he wanted to give others the chance he'd fought so hard to earn. His 2002 album, Fantastic Plastic People, reunited him with icons like Joe Strummer and Annie Lennox. By 2004, he reimagined those tracks with an electronic edge on Black Magic, proving that even in his 60s, he could evolve without losing reggae's heartbeat. He kept performing at major festivals, kept recording, kept showing the world that age was just a number when your passion remained unshakable. In 2003, Jamaica awarded him the Order of Merit, the nation's highest honor for artistic achievement. It was a historic moment. The island that raised him, that shaped him, officially recognized how deeply he'd shaped its cultural voice. For decades, he would stand as the only living reggae musician with that distinction. The only one. Then came 2010. After years of fans campaigning, lobbying, insisting he deserved recognition, Jimmy Cliff entered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The only Jamaican besides Bob Marley to receive that honor, when Wyclef Jean inducted him on stage. The moment felt like vindication, like the world finally catching up to what Jamaica always knew. Jimmy Cliff belonged among the greatest. And he didn't stop. In 2012, he collaborated with Tim Armstrong on Rebirth, an album that earned him another Grammy. In 2022, at 78 years old, he released Refugees, an album filled with soulful reflections on humanity, hope, and home. Songs about displacement, belonging, survival, themes that had followed him his entire life. He was still creating, still speaking truth through music. Throughout all of it, his family remained his sanctuary. His wife, Latifah Chambers, stood beside him through every triumph and struggle. Together they raised 3 children, Lility, Akin, and Nabia, a talented actress and singer who carried her father's artistic gift into her own career. Jimmy's voice reached millions, but his heart always came home to them. November 24, 2025, Jimmy Cliff was hospitalized after suffering a seizure. His body, which had carried him across stages worldwide for over 6 decades, was failing. Pneumonia set in, and at 81 years old, surrounded by the echoes of a life fully lived, he crossed over. His wife's announcement shattered hearts across the globe. Fans who'd grown up with his music, musicians who'd been inspired by his courage, nations that claimed him as their own, all mourning the loss of a man whose songs had become woven into humanity's emotional fabric. Latifah's words were simple but devastating. She thanked his family, friends, fellow artists, and co-workers who'd shared his journey, and she spoke directly to his fans, millions of people he'd never met but who'd loved him anyway. She told them their support had been his strength, that he appreciated every single one of them. $5 million. That's what Jimmy Cliff left behind in monetary terms. But his real wealth can't be measured in bank accounts. It lives in every person who found strength in many rivers to cross when they thought they couldn't go on. It lives in every dreamer who heard you can get it, if you really want, and decided to try one more time. It lives in the global reach of reggae, a genre he helped carry from Kingston streets to the world's biggest stages. It lives in The Harder They Come, a film that showed Jamaica's truth with unflinching honesty and became a cultural touchstone. It lives in 2 Grammys, a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, Jamaica's Order of Merit. It lives in collaborations with legends, in songs that climbed charts across continents, in a voice that could comfort and inspire in equal measure. But most of all, it lives in the music itself, songs that will outlive all of us, songs that future generations will discover and wonder how something recorded decades ago can still feel so alive, so urgent, so true. Jimmy Cliff didn't just make music. He gave the world courage. He gave us hope. He gave us endless rivers to cross together. And somehow his voice always made the crossing feel possible. Even in death, that voice continues to echo, soft, powerful, immortal. Because some artists don't just create art, they become it. And Jimmy Cliff, born James Chambers in a tiny Jamaican parish, became the sound of resilience itself. The sound of never giving up, the sound of believing in beautiful worlds, even when the world feels hard. Rest easy, legend. The rivers you crossed brought all of us to higher ground.